Welcome to Our Texas Magazine, the podcast. I'm your host, Jamero Berry. Today we have Dr. Kenya Ayers, newly minted president of the Northeast Campus of the Tarrant County College District. TCC, as it's also known, has 5 traditional, that's brick and mortar, campuses and an online one named TCC Connect. Dr. Ayers holds a bachelor's degree in psychology from the University of Michigan, a master's degree in clinical psychology from Eastern Michigan University, and a doctorate in education from the University of Houston. She was selected in February 2019 and took on the duties and responsibilities of that position the 1st of July. Dr. Kenya held a successful listening tour a few weeks ago to get a better feel for the issues and concerns of the students, especially the non-traditional students, those that may have families, those that have children, have a full-time job, and also enrolled at TCC. I discussed a few significant aspects regarding Texas community colleges. There are 50 community college districts, or from 126 to 138 community colleges in the state. A little over 500,000 students attend, according to the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board. TCC lists itself on its website as the 7th largest college in Texas. At Dr. Kenya's campus, there are over 17,000 students. Out of 18 past and present TCC campus presidents, Dr. Kenya happens to be the sole or the lone African-American woman in that position. Irma Johnson Hadley had served as TCC's chancellor from 2009 to 2015, but she never served as a campus president. We encountered some technical problems initially. We now pick up on the conversation with Dr. Kenya, where we discuss the figures from the Dallas County Community College District. 18 or so, maybe a little bit more. There's only been 2 as college presidents, Dr. Sharon Blackman and Dr. Jennifer Wimbish, both retired. In the Houston College District, there are currently 2, Dr. Monique Humphrey at Northeast College and Dr. Margaret Ford Fisher at Online College. There may have been one previously.
And she was already at Northeast before she went to Online. So,
At Alamo College's district, the history there has about 5 individual colleges and that have had presidents anywhere from about perhaps 15 to 20, but only 2 were African-American women. Previously, Dr. Angel Runnels and now Dr. Adema Williams Lawston, both at St. Philip's College, a historically black college serving a predominantly Hispanic student body. None have served at Austin Community College. So, what do these numbers say to you?
that opportunity abounds.
Yes. Well, how about this? Any idea on how to close the gap between the number
Absolutely.
of campuses, college campuses, and the number of presidents, or is it no longer important?
It's always important. It's always important. In my welcoming statement to our campus, I acknowledged the fact that I am the first African American woman. I would be remiss not to acknowledge the fact, not because of something about me, but because I do think it says something about where we are and what needs to happen in higher education. We talk a lot about the diversification of our student bodies, but our students are saying we are looking for leadership that looks like us. And more than that, when you are in leadership, you have a voice.
Yes.
you have the opportunity to set the stage for what the conversation is at the table. You are no longer waiting for someone else to dictate the conversation, but you have a place of leadership to say, here are things that matter. Here are things that have been omitted from the dialogue, and consider this as we move forward. So nationally, across all of higher education, 7% of college and university presidents are African American. A smaller percentage of that then would be women in the role. The greater majority are men. So the question you asked earlier, excuse me, is what then can we do about that? I think it starts, one, with exposure. So the exposure being, I don't know about you, but when I was in school, the thought of a college president, let alone thinking who looked like what, it just wasn't on my radar screen.
Yes.
When there was conversation about when there was conversation about occupations and possibilities for the future, this wasn't on the radar screen. So exposure matters, just like we have done in a really diligent, intentional job in areas like engineering, and said, let's make sure that our children see people that look like us and know that this is a possibility, and that we mentor them towards success, and that we open up doors, and that we expose and we provide internships. The same has to be done in this arena as well. So one of the things that I have talked to my leadership about is mid-level preparation, and how we groom people at the mid-level, so there is succession and there are opportunities there. But I think it starts even earlier. It's the young people that I mentor that start from the time they're in their associate's degree, that I say, that's not enough. There's more for you, and there's greater opportunity, and think about this. But it's people who come through my doors. Even my administrative assistant said, you mentor a lot of people. But that's what we do, right? That people, some who look like us and some who don't, have said, I just want a fair shake. I just want an opportunity. Or I've been applying and I'm not being successful. Will you tell me what you know? That's our responsibility, is just to help people understand that it's possible and what the path is. And then for me, several years ago, the American Association of Community Colleges magazine did, Community College Journal, did a feature on me, and they called it The Mentorship of Kenya Ayers. And in that, they talked about mentors in my life, both my role as a mentor, but my role being mentored. And I made a distinction with them that I have had both mentors and I've had sponsors. I've had people who mentored me and nourished me, nurtured me, and poured into me, and sometimes chastised me. But I've also had people who just opened doors and who, opened their networks to me, or who said, this is a leadership development opportunity you need to go to, and I'll nominate you, or I'll sponsor you, or I know so-and-so who leads it, and that's my friend, and I'll make sure that they're aware that you are a rising star and that you have a shake. And then it's also our responsibility to say to people that we're mentoring, here's where you're doing well, and here's where there are gaps in your preparation, and I'll help you get there. And that's been my experience also. That was a long answer, sorry. I'm passionate about that, though.
Well, it's a refreshing one, because just when you listen to those in leadership positions, either they're not asked the question, or they're asked the question, but they don't give a full-throated response to let people know they are that interested and their life reflects it. And that's why I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for the question.
You've been known as a inspiring, motivational speaker. I'd like you to tell about the one particular time you were speaking to a group of students at Kettering University. The audience repeated one of your many sayings. It was, it's up to you to enlarge who you are. Then as you called out each grad's name, you snapped your finger and they said aloud, it's up to you. How'd you come to do that?
That invitation came at the request of a young man who has since graduated. He's a phenomenal entrepreneur, businessman in his own right, has done mentoring, and he just said, Dr. Ayers, would you come? Would you speak into the lives of these students? They look up to you. And so how do you not do that?
Sure.
How it got on YouTube is a whole nother conversation. But you know what? Okay, so I always, this is a prayer agenda. I always ask, what is it that I should say to a particular audience?
Okay.
And for that audience, as I thought about it and as I prayed about it, it was very clear to me that they needed to understand that if we are to be successful as a people, as human beings, that it was up to them to stand up and to do their part. The other piece of that is I have a mentor now deceased. She's been deceased a couple years now, and she said, Rita Johnson, let me say her name, and she said, Dr. Rita Johnson said, it is important for you to accept the inspired awareness of who you are. I was like, woo. Exactly. No pressure. And so that also is a piece of that, just helping people to understand your purpose in life is bigger than sometimes the little box that we put ourselves in. Okay. That it's up to us to step out of the box and to really step into the greatness that we've been destined to move into.
How did you? What helped you create the
call and response of our culture?
Is that the deal? The call and response?
Yeah, but in a generation that was, think about this. So this was many years ago, but that's a generation that was doing spoken word, and they were kind of snap generation. They weren't, clap like the grandmothers, but they were. So just what came to me in the moment.
Well, that was cool. That's cool. Some people, these are more about the personal stories that you've talked about. Some people may have read personal stories about you. One is how tough it is to figure out when and where opportunities come, but you say you just got to be prepared. And you tell this one about how it was right after 9/11. You're at an airport in a long line. I think you read the book, and a conversation begins between you and another passenger, if you get on the plane. And he mentions to you, just because of the kind of presence that you present to him, hey, I'm in construction, but I really have nothing to do with it. But maybe you ought to apply for
the president
of college. And then he says, even though you're not going to get it.
He told me to apply to be president of Harvard.
Okay.
He asked what I was interested in. And I said, I aspire to be a college president. I've said it. I've known it for 20 years. Yes. I've been in higher ed 30. For 20 of those years, I've said, I want to be a college president, and have said it confidently, even on the days when I couldn't see it. I always think about that expression, sometimes you get just enough light for the step you're on. So some days I could only see here, but I would say it. I would speak it in faith, right? And so, I was in the airport, and I meet this guy. He's an older Jewish man, lovely. And I'm very, people don't always know this about me, I'm very much an introvert. And so I'm really comfortable in a corner, reading a book, and the lines after 9/11, particularly in the Washington, D.C. area where I was working, were so long.
I can imagine.
Yeah, and they were awful. And so I was in line, I was reading, minding my business, and he just started talking. And so I told him, he asked, what do you do? And so we exchanged information. And finally he said, apply to be president of Harvard. And he said, you won't get it, but you will show yourself to have been a contender. And that really left an impression on me. And we ended up striking up a friendship, and he mentored me in business and gave me, that's a longer story, but poured some seed into me for business as well.
What I recall is that you said you had you sent him a letter and requested him
to mentor me.
To mentor you. And he said, well, my plate's full, and you thought, well, gee whiz, but you looked into the envelope, and there was a $5,000
$5,000 check.
$5,000 check. And then you went to another place, services or something, and someone there had given you 15.
Yeah.
So what do you make of all that?
God is good all the time. And all the time, God is good. So this goes back to that expression, though, that sometimes life is pulling you forward, calling you into something, and it feels like a magnet. It's just calling you forward. The business that I started at that point was Esperanza Communications, and it was under that umbrella, under that auspices, that I began the motivational speaking work, that I did radio, that this was all of this communications work that helped me become more confident in that realm when I returned back to higher education. But I started a publishing imprint, and I published a few authors. I wrote a book for women who were interested in pursuing doctoral degrees. So the mentoring, the leadership development, all the things that I love, I began to put under that imprint.
Okay. Then let's see here. You had about you mentioned to some other students.
I have no secrets from you, do I?
Oh, well, the internet. You mentioned some things that that people should do, students should do to be successful.
Okay.
And the first one you said is create physical reminders of your goal. What physical reminders did you create when you were in college?
Yeah. So on the back of my door in graduate school, my apartment door, I had a sign that said Dr. Ayers, Dr. Kenya F. Ayers on the back of the door. And it was long before that was a reality, but I had to see it. Like, that's what I was moving toward. So every day I'm moving toward the door and I'm moving closer to being Dr. Ayers. Like, that was it.
You also said hang with positive people who will hold you accountable on the things you commit to do.
Absolutely.
Name a time your group kept you focused.
So I mentioned a moment ago about writing a book. The book for women that I wrote.
Yes.
When I first started writing it, I was so proud because I'm organized, right? So I would have a lovely Excel spreadsheet, and it would have the names of each chapter and a little sort of annotated description of what each chapter would contain. And it would have the dates by which I would complete each chapter. Oh. And then when I got busy with my many projects, I would just kind of rearrange those dates and move them on. Well, one day,
make the adjustment.
Exactly, just adjust them, tweak them a bit, if you will. And one day, a colleague of mine from the university I worked at the time, who was a published author, said to me, "To whom are you accountable?" And ironically, I had just written something for my church, a protocol around accountability and how you do that from a spiritual context. So I understood accountability. And I asked her, "What do you mean?" And she said, "Who's holding you to task?" And out of that, I began to identify a group of people. And I made them an accountability team on my behalf. And that's how I got the book done. Instead of me having this lovely, pretty, well-designed, but secret list, I ended up giving it to my team. I put my mother on the team because if nobody else will cheer for me, Mom is going to cheer for me every time. Yeah. I put a friend on there who was interested in doing a doctorate because she would be pulling on me because she wanted the information. I just put, I don't know, maybe 5 people on the list. Okay. And I put multiple people, and I think this is important for people to hear, because this applies to other areas where people need to be held accountable. Sure. Because sometimes if 1 or 2 people drop off, fall off, you still got the other people who are holding your feet to the fire. And that can apply to all kinds of things where it's challenging for us to get the work done.
Sure. Then you mentioned 2 other things. You said your success impacts other people besides yourself. And then the last one was you never know who's watching you. They may play an important role in your future. Can you name a time when you gained a surprise mentor or sponsor, other than the guy in line in New York and all that old stuff?
Yeah. So At my last institution, Harper College outside of Chicago, when I started, I interviewed with the president of the college as part of the interview process. I went there as an academic dean. And in the interview process, I said to him, I aspire to be a college president one day. And I, just like you've done your homework on me, I had done my homework on him. And I knew that he had been a fellow through the American Council on Education. This is a national fellowship. These folks who get this fellowship are called ACE fellows. I knew that he had been an ACE fellow. That also had been an opportunity on my radar screen. And, I had nothing to lose so other than that job. But I said to him, would you potentially sponsor me as an ACE fellow if I got this job? And he said, you know what, Kenya, if you come here, you give us 3 good years, yes, I would sponsor you as a fellow. And the college had never done that previously. Now, that doesn't sound like much to ask unless you understand what sponsorship really means. So what it really entails is while you are on the fellowship, if you get it, and there are many, many hoops you have to go through, but if you get that fellowship, your college, your home institution pays your salary while you go away. And I went away for a whole academic year and came back to Texas. So this is really my 3rd time in Texas, but 3rd time is charm. So he was true to his word. 4 months after I'd been there, he gave me a big project, which was to work on diversity, equity, and inclusion, chairing a task force for the college and helping them in areas where they had become stymied around how do we diversify to look like our community.
Especially being the chair. Yes.
Especially being the chair and having only been there 4 months. So he partnered me with a white gentleman who was the oldest member of the faculty. In fact, they called him the grandfather of the faculty.
Sure.
Who said, I don't know anything about doing this work, but I trust that you know, and I will work with you. So he used his influence, I used my know-how, and we had an amazing end result that has been transformative for the college. Well, that was an opportunity for the president to get to see my work, right?
Yes.
The president, his name's Dr. Ender, this was interesting. So the grandfather of the faculty says to me, wow, I got release time and that's going to free me to do the work. And I thought, Kenya, you didn't ask for anything. Silly me. I just was excited the president was going to let me work on it. Well, as an administrator, we don't get to, you can get a stipend, but we don't get release time from a class. And so I thought, should I have asked for something? Did I miss an opportunity? Was I not savvy? And then that still small voice said, go back to your president, ask him to mentor you. So I went back to my president, I asked him to be my mentor, and it was one of the best things I could have asked. So that by the time it got to 3 years later, he not only had seen me in action on the Diversity and Inclusion Task Force, he'd given me opportunities to build satellite campuses on behalf of the college. He trusted me, but he also had opened a door for me to go to the Future Presidents Institute. He then nominated me for this ACE fellowship. Wow. I became the first one from the college to go, and he convinced the board, pay her salary, let her go. I was supposed to come back for a year. I came back for 3. And then the work that I got to do there as a vice president when I came back led me to TCC. So you just never know what's coming. But that was a lovely surprise relationship that developed. And if you had him here today, he'd say we're friends as well.
Well, you also had to be prepared, and you were prepared.
Sir.
And that's what opportunities, taking advantage of them, needs from an individual.
That's right.
Now I wanted to get to the talk show as a host that you've been, 2 of them out of Michigan, Relationship Solutions with Dr. Kenya, and then the other one, Prescriptions for Hope with Dr. Kenya. And you received a 2011 Stellar Award.
Nomination.
A nomination. What did you hear in radio that didn't address these 2 areas?
What radio was missing at the time, and honestly probably is still missing today 2019, is the focus of the programming was on it was on relationships from a biblical or spiritual perspective.
Yes.
It was on our relationship with God, our relationship with one another, and our relationship with ourselves. Mm-hmm. So that really covers the gamut of all kinds of things, mm-hmm. but it focused on talk. So for me as a book lover, I could bring on authors I loved, and I could bring on individuals that I thought were interesting, and we had real compelling conversation. Look, we're going to flip the tables one day and really talk about relationships in a way that we all need to. There's all of us are touched by relationships in some way. So we talked about everything from marital communication
yes.
to remarriage, okay. to grief.
Okay.
I mean, just you name it.
Okay.
We covered it. But it was interspersed with music that was inspirational, spiritual, uplifting, and it really hit the heart and the soul of people. I had a lot of folks that would call me off the air and say, please do therapy with me, but that's not my calling. I do, as a clinical psychologist by training, I do triage. I can assess a situation, but that's who I am as an administrator. I can assess it and then I delegate.
Okay.
So.
Now, I know you got to go. Just
yes,
a couple of
sir.
things. I knew I was, the first time you came to Texas, I knew I was in Texas when?
Oh, a policeman went by me on the freeway on a horse. He was on the frontage road. No, he wasn't on the freeway, but he was on the frontage road on a horse. Houston, yeah.
Favorite book?
Shantaram.
Favorite movie?
The American President.
A favorite rapper, R&B singer, or song?
Anita Baker.
Okay.
Anita Baker, anything, everything, all the time.
Everything. Favorite actor or actress?
Ooh. Oh, I don't know. There's so many.
Yeah.
I got to take a pass on that one.
Okay. My ideal.
Oh, Viola Davis.
Viola Davis. My ideal vacation.
Turks and Caicos.
My most embarrassing moment.
I will never tell you on air.
I drive a
car with a goose dent in it.
You mentioned once when you were talking to students that you didn't have much money when you were in college and you drove a hoopty. What was the hoopty?
It was a Chevy.
Okay. The best advice I could give a 20-year-old.
Oh, don't give up on your dreams. Believe in yourself, trust the process.
My best asset, just a few more.
My heart.
The first thing I do when I get home.
Ooh, take off my shoes.
If I hadn't ended up as a college president, I'd be?
One of two things. I'd either be running a bed and breakfast, or I'd be a psychologist.
My most prized possession?
My family.
And then you've been very vocal about how you care for your parents. Can you tell us a little bit about your parents and the role that they've been in your life?
I love them with every fiber of my being. My parents are Wendell and Annie. They have been married 54 years. Wow. That will not tell you anything about my age. No, I'm teasing. They've been married 54 years. They are the foundation of everything that I am. They are people of tremendous faith and a hard work ethic. Dad is dealing with Alzheimer's. We are dealing with Alzheimer's. They taught me to love God and love people, love our people, and to always strive to be my best. And they taught me what excellence means. My mother is an educator, so I'm a second-generation educator. Yes. She was a principal in the Detroit public school system. Dad was an engineer and then went back and worked for a nonprofit, taught in the Detroit community, taught skilled trades and sort of vocational education. They are, but they raised me. This is interesting. So I was born in Detroit, but they raised me in the suburbs of Detroit, which really fueled early on my ability to move between communities with comfort. And I appreciate that now in ways that I might not have as a kid. but they are beautiful inside and out, and I hope you'll get a chance to meet them.
Just two last things. I promise there's two last things. You've been vocal about caring for them.
Yes.
Why have you been so public?
Because there shouldn't be a stigma on loving the people who loved us first. Okay. And because I need people to understand that that there is a priority for my work and there's a priority for my family of origin. And in this season, I need to be clear. I moved them they came from Michigan. I moved here from Chicago, and I need people to know that just as when I gave my opening statement to the college when I was interviewing, that they are not just the wind beneath my wings, but they help fuel my understanding of what matters as an educator and students at the center of the work and understanding underserved and marginalized students. And, my mother became an educator, but was told by people that she wasn't going to amount to anything because people from her neighborhood didn't become anything. She grew up in the projects of Detroit, and her mother had a 5th grade education. Like, that is the root of who I am. I can't forget that. I would not be, I couldn't look myself in the mirror if I went on to, success and then I abandoned my parents. That's not who I was raised to be.
Last question. Is there anything that you would like to say that I didn't give an opportunity for you to say?
You referenced at the top of the program about being a first for our district. My charge is to be the president for the entire campus, and I take that charge very seriously.
Yes.
I love it. I get up each day excited about it. I'm proud of my team, but what fuels me is we have people's hopes and dreams, and we get to help promote those. That's a gift to me, and I don't take it for granted. Thank you for letting me talk about it.
Absolutely. Again, so much thank you. Just thank you, Dr. Ayers. Thank you, Dr. Kenya. And perhaps if there's another time, we'll chat more.
I look forward to it.
My pleasure. Again, Our Texas Hour magazine, the podcast, you had it, Dr. Ayers.
Thank you.
Much.
Bye.
Lady, thanks so much.
Thank you.
And I know you were going out of that door. Hey, guys.
Thank you.